as worship pastors. We're called to lead the room, not the row. So when we look at a space, are we leading everybody or are we leading somebody's? Whether it's a room of 50 people or 1,500 people, I'm aware that in that room, somebody's heart is broken, somebody's far from Jesus and given this one last chance. Somebody in the room is there just because their wife is making them come. And then there's some people that have really met Jesus, and this is something that they need to feed their soul.
Welcome to the Ferment podcast, conversations about worship and transformation. Today's guest is worship leader, songwriter, and CrossFit coach Tim Brown.
What is up, everybody? In my office with Tim Brown. What's up, dog?
Hey, what's going on?
Man, came from all the way through the mountains, over the mountains.
Through the mountains, through the fields.
Yeah, flew across the Midwest.
I was blown away coming through the Louisville airport and seeing a statue and a testament to the good work of Mr. Colonel Sanders.
Oh, yeah, you like that?
Yeah, I just assumed Kentucky Fried Chicken was just kind of like...
made up?
I just thought it was like an adjective. I didn't realize it was actually like there's not a banner or a statue for Coors Light walking into DIA.
Duly noted. Yeah, no, actually... Colonel Sanders is a noun. Yeah. Kentucky Fried Chicken is a thing. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, it was incredible.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is anytime I ever travel out of the country, people will always ask, where are you from? That's just the most basic human question. Mm-hmm. Who are you? Where you're from? Like, what do you like? And I always tell them, well, I'm from the United States. And then they'll say, oh, what state? And they're expecting like New York, California. And I tell them Kentucky. And literally the only connecting point is Kentucky Fried Chicken. Like that's it. That's all they know about Kentucky. They don't know anything else.
That's it.
So that's why we exist here in the Bluegrass State.
It's incredible.
There you go. Well, Tim, welcome to the podcast. And welcome to this little thing we do. We should have had you on 2.5 years ago, but finally the stars have aligned and you're here. So glad you're here with us today. Yeah. Hey, why don't we do this? We'll just do what we always do on the podcast. I know you, but probably a lot of people don't. So where do you come from? And how did you grow up?
Yeah. Well, I am a worship leader in Grand Junction, Colorado. It's the other part of Colorado. We're basically as close as you can get to Utah before you're Mormon. We're right on the corner there on that side of it. So Denver's on the complete other side. So we're called the Western Slope of Colorado in Grand Junction. And I'm at Canyon View Vineyard Church out there. And it's been a church out there for about 35 years. I think it's been a Vineyard church for 25, 28 years, something like that.
Okay, so an adoption.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, nice.
So they became a vineyard in the 90s, I believe.
Yeah.
And then, it's been a pillar in the community for a long time. And so I've been a part of Canyon View Vineyard Church since 2007. I'm a pastor's kid and grew up in my own version of the South, Southwest. Grew up in New Mexico all the way through high school. And then came out to Grand Junction, started college out there. Being a pastor's kid, my dad's got my name. So I've always been Little Tim, been Tim Jr.
You're Tim Jr.?
Yeah. Timothy Brown the second. My dad's Tim Brown the first. Well, he doesn't get a suffix.
Yeah.
That's the perk of being first.
That's right.
And so always Pastor Tim's kid, Pastor Tim's boy, Little Tim, all that stuff. And so when I moved to Grand Junction, I said, I just want to be my own Tim.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get a part of a church I could get lost in. And Candy's a fairly good-sized church. And saw the worship team and saw the culture of the church and everything. I was like, man, I'd love to play drums here once a month or every other month or so. Got plugged in with the team, and one thing led to another. And
became a musician?
Yep.
Became a leader?
Yep. Now I started leading worship at my dad's church when I was 14, 15 years old. I have one of those stories you get from youth group. Went to a youth camp when I was 13, 14 years old. Found the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Felt called into ministry in that moment, and just stars aligned to get plugged in and learn this instrument, that instrument, this thing, that thing. I always wanted to be a drummer. Never wanted to be a singer. Never wanted to be a guitar player or anything like that. In fact, the first instrument I ever learned was a cornet, not even a full horn. It was
Yeah.
a baby trumpet. And after 2 months of that in 7th grade, I said, I'll never learn another instrument again.
It just disheartened you.
Yeah. And so then once 7th grade football came into effect, the coach said, hey, do you want to start? And I said, yeah. And he said, it's all right. Well, we need guys to join choir. So if you join choir, you'll start.
Wait a minute. So the football coach is saying, look, I need people in my choir.
He's a choir teacher and one of the
That's
7th
hysterical.
grade. Yeah. So I joined choir. 3 months later, football's done, and they need someone to do the solo for Little Drummer Boy, 7th grade. And
Christmas special?
Christmas special. I auditioned for it. I told my parents I got it, and they were like, we didn't know you sang. It's like, yeah, I started choir. They didn't even know I started choir.
Okay.
So they came to the production ready to comfort me afterwards, and then just this little 7th grade angel came out of nowhere, and I'd been singing ever since.
And that's kind of where you discovered you could sing.
Yeah. And so that into youth camp meeting what I felt was my calling from the Lord, and went to a internship program, 15 years old, went full line sinker into a big church camp experience kind of thing. Really fell in love with what intentional excellence and the Holy Spirit connected could do to a worship environment. And that's kind of been what I've been doing ever since, as a volunteer, as a part-time staffer, as a full-time staffer, as a pastor of worship, stuff with Vineyard Worship and Thrive and different things like that.
Yeah.
Rise.
Shout out to Rise.
Yeah. It's just how excellence and Holy Spirit are not two roads that you got to choose which one or the other.
That's
that
right.
they're connected.
Yeah.
And the Lord honors that.
Yeah.
So.
You can plan and be spontaneous.
Yeah.
Yeah. All those things. Well, let's go back to New Mexico, because I was telling you earlier, I've never even driven through New Mexico. Like, you grew up in New Mexico, right? And I feel like I've traveled all over these United States. I feel like I've been everywhere, but there's this little spot in the Southwest that I've never been to at all.
Yeah.
And so when you say New Mexico, the only thing I think is like Breaking Bad, which I know is like the worst stereotype in the world. I just think Walt cooking meth, out in the desert in his underwear.
Well, and that's the thing, is like, it's all about Albuquerque. And so if you grew up in New Mexico, Albuquerque's the metroplex.
Yeah.
Where I was from is an hour and a half from the border, South New Mexico, and like, you just get killed. You get shot for more than just cooking meth, but like, that's where the real stuff happens, and that's where cartels are and stuff like that. And my dad was a pastor of a church out there, and literally there's 3 meth labs in the backyard behind
wait a minute.
our church.
So you're being serious?
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
So it's just,
I remember
it's just wild. It's Wild West. There's still something about it that's untamed.
Yeah, I remember. Our high school, one of the foreign languages you could do for 2 years of your foreign language was English.
Wait a minute. So there was so much Spanish that English was also considered a foreign language, depending on which side of the ball you were on.
That's right. So a lot of people that fled Mexico, people that fled cartels, fled all, a lot of friends and first generation Americans and stuff down there. I remember a Sunday, like, my dad's, we grew up really Pentecostal, charismatic, so my dad's like, we're praying to the north, and we're praying for our schools, we're praying for our families, we're praying for the east, where the big city is. We pray that they would come to know Jesus. We pray for the west, that they would know God. We pray for the south. We pray specifically for these 3 meth labs right behind our church, that they would fall in love with Jesus.
Yeah, that was his prayer.
That was the prayer. It wasn't like every week, but it was like, let's just do this right now, like, real kind of spontaneous moment.
So everybody knew. There's 3 meth labs. Oh, those guys. I drive.
Greg's meth labs. If they had a sign, they didn't have a sign.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
dang. Okay.
Yeah, so.
All right. So let's hang out here in New Mexico for a second.
Yeah.
So, what does it mean to be a New Mexican? What is the vibe? Because like here in Kentucky, there's an ethos here, and it takes a while to pick up on it, and some of it even depends on where you're at in the state a little bit. But there's a thing here, and every state kind of has something that it's contributing. What does it mean to be from New Mexico?
Well, if Kentucky is fried chicken and bourbon
and basketball,
New Mexico is green chilies and Tex-Mex.
Yeah, that's right.
So you got that kind of stuff. I mean, it's really a
Is it
melting pot.
Cowboys? Because in my
It's a melting pot.
Yeah, because so part of my imagination is like it's like Cowboys. I actually see that, and like the cool like Indian style blankets and
everything's
Adobe homes or something. I kind of feel
Adobe. That. Yeah, a lot of Indian culture, a lot of Mexican culture, a lot of cowboy culture, and I didn't identify with any of that stuff.
Yeah,
because my parents were transplants from Colorado, and just happened to be called into ministry into New Mexico. So, like, I had friends that did 4-H, cow roping.
I want to see little Timmy with a cowboy hat roping out in the arena.
Yeah. So, went to 4-H dances growing up. Went to the rodeo. That's where all the cool kids were. Wasn't some weird spot, on the side or anything. But yeah, just a little football town. Our claim to fame in Lovington, New Mexico is BrianUrlacher, middle linebacker for the Bears, went to Lovington High School. And so everything's geared around him. And so there's a BrianUrlacher road. There's a BrianUrlacher mural on Main Street. It's just him in his high school jersey. And then this is Lovington, period, just do it. Like they painted that whole thing for a big Nike campaign back in the early 10s or late 2000s, something like that. And,
does BrianUrlacher ever come back home?
Yes. One of the big events every summer is a charity basketball game. And what he does is for every sports team in Lovington, New Mexico, high school sports team, is he pays for each of them to get Nike shoes.
Got it.
So if you're on the cheerleading squad, if you're on the football team, if you're on the basketball team, tennis team, any of that kind of stuff, they're all decked out in Nike. All of them get Nike uniforms.
Yeah.
So we're this little podunk 3A football team or 3A tennis team or whatever you have.
You got sick kit.
We are loaded. And so you're going to other farm towns where it's just poverty stricken and, it ain't much, but it's a simple life. You got that kind of thing. And then we're coming in with a charter bus and all Nike stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Urlacher.
Urlacher special. So the special charity basketball game would kind of offset that here and there. Part of it would be to fund athletics in Lovington, New Mexico. The other part would be to fund athletics like regionally and elsewhere and stuff. It was a big thing that Brian's always been passionate about. An aspect of that game was bringing in professional athletes to come play the basketball game. So you'd have alumni from Lovington High School, which was like our vice principal, who was a star basketball player back in the 70s.
Yeah.
You had other guys that...
Is he posting up KD?
Yeah. No professional basketball players. So it was all professional football players.
Okay, got it.
So you got Zach Thomas, so I'm old enough now to where I can say I'm dating myself.
Yeah.
This is fun. Michael Strahan.
Yeah.
Like he's still in the league when I was in there. And, so Michael Strahan, Zach Taylor, Jason Taylor, Zach Thomas, they're just like Zach Thomas is like 5'11", like just sturdy brick house guy and can dunk it like with no problem.
Yeah.
Like all these guys are just incredible athletes and all of them are just putting on this dunk show. And so all these guys are in the middle of nowhere. It's like you say you haven't driven through New Mexico. Like no one does. Like you don't go through New Mexico to go anywhere. You go to New Mexico or you do not go to New Mexico.
Correct.
It's not on the way to anything unless you're wanting to drive to Mexico, which again, no one does.
Yeah.
So
I need to make that intentional trip. That's what I have to do.
Yeah.
I need to go to Santa Fe.
Yeah. Santa Fe's good.
Yeah.
So the northern part, that Breaking Bad makes it into a thing that it's not universally. And so.
Of course.
Yeah.
But well, thanks.
If you want to see the real Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Go see my dad's church in
in
southern New Mexico.
And we'll pray for those
3 meth labs.
Those 3 meth labs.
That's it.
Well, thanks for giving us a little bit of an education there.
Yeah, man.
About New Mexico. I feel better about that. I'm not sure exactly that's the Anthony Bourdain monologue.
No.
But we'll take it. Hey, you mentioned athletics, and I know you well enough to know that like you're an athlete. Like that's part of your story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like talk a little bit about like growing up and playing tennis. How did that happen?
Well, so BrianUrlacher being as big as he is, there's a history of football. And so we are 20 minutes away from the Texas border. And so like an hour and a half east of us is the school that Friday Night Lights is based on. And we'd play Odessa Permian every once in a while in football and stuff like that. So we were the 3A equivalent of that. We've got like 18 state championships. Like it's what the school's known for.
Yeah.
So every kid, like when you see, like there'd be times where the high school football players come to your school at third grade and you're like, I can't believe the Lovington Wildcats are in the homeroom right now.
Yeah.
Pinch me. Is that Caden Jamison, starting quarterback for the,
Oh my God, it's Caden.
It's Caden. Yeah. And so that was cool. I mean, like my dad was, it was a small church. And so he did youth ministry as well as senior pastor ministry. And so a lot of these guys that were like the studs on the football team, they came to our youth group. And so like I'd be third grade. And again, the guy's legit. Caden Jamison, a good family friend. And he'd be like, what's up, Tim? And everybody'd be like, Caden Jamison, the starting quarterback for the
man,
so,
he talks to me.
Yeah, man, we know each other. so I mean that's what that was, and I fell out of love with football 9th grade or so. And they said we got to do something. So I was a big kid, and so if you're not doing football, then you're probably doing baseball, or you're doing shot put or discus at track or something like that. I was like, I think I'm gonna do tennis.
Yeah, and this came up earlier in the morning when we were at breakfast. You're a lefty.
Yeah.
Why didn't you just play first base?
I hate baseball so much. I hate sitting around. I hate
you hate waiting on it.
Well, I hate waiting on it, and I hate waiting to get hit. I'm eventually going to get hit by the baseball, and that's not a sport.
Yeah.
So baseball is a sport, but not for me.
Got it.
And so the sport of waiting to get hit for me was not something I look forward to. And so, tennis was the thing. And my dad was like, you kidding me?
So this is breaking your dad's heart.
Breaking my dad's heart. So he thought he had the starting running back or the starting left guard or the starting whatever.
Fullback.
And and it was like, I'm going to play tennis. And so 6 foot, 200 pounds on the tennis court, just dwarfed everybody and fell in love with it. There's something that's totally different about tennis than any other sport, because so much of life is an individual sport, and then you're working as a team on avenues of your life, and like getting something to where you have to work on your mental athleticism as well as your physical athleticism, and just being aware of the moment, being aware of what each and every moment does to the outcome. Like it just makes you grow up faster and stuff, individual sports. So I fell in love with it.
Well, and there's something about tennis too that's I don't know much about tennis. Like I watch some Wimbledon like once a year. I mean, that's basically what I know, right?
Yeah.
But I do know that there's an aspect of tennis that's, especially at that level, and I'm sure this trickles down through all the levels, but there's something about tennis that's endurance oriented. Because you'll watch some of these matches, and dudes will be out there for over 3 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, that takes a certain kind of mental stamina.
Yeah. The thing with tennis is that you have literally probably everybody within the exact same percentage of physical ability. Like, it's not like baseball where Tommy has a 95 mile an hour pitch. No one's hitting off Tommy.
Yeah.
Tommy doesn't know what it feels like to get hit until, senior year of college or finally hits the pros. Most varsity tennis players are going to serve within a certain percentage of each other. Like there's just not many guys that serve faster than, say, a 95 mile an hour serve, unless they have this full torque and all these years of experience. Yeah. Most kids have the same style, forehands and backhands, strategies of either being on the back line, baseline, or front and center at the net. There's some strategy stuff there. The thing that shifts, and I played a little bit of college tennis and watched guys play college, and even watched the pros now. Like there's a guy, Nick Kyrgios, who's a Australian player, and if he had the mental awareness of a Rafael Nadal or a Roger Federer, he'd be the best player in the world.
Yeah.
But the mental side of tennis is so paramount to what it does to the physical aspect of tennis, because every aspect of tennis, every shot of tennis, every point of tennis, you can just feel success dwindling away. it's like an hourglass.
Yeah.
And as soon as you have a break of serve, the hourglass shifts back. And,
Yeah.
and so that mental struggle of trying not to think about what just happened the last 3 points and moving on to the next thing. Like no other sport is like that.
Yeah. The momentum can change and change.
Yeah.
And change.
Because when you have a decent series in football or you have a decent quarter in basketball, it's something you can pull back on in the next quarter. And, like you see the Golden State Warriors, like they're down 20 points. It's like, who cares? Steph Curry shoots 5 threes or back in the game.
Also in sports like that, there are just rotations of players, right?
Right.
So maybe, we'll switch to NBA here for a second.
Yeah.
Maybe your second team.
Yep.
The second rotation that comes in at the end of the first quarter, starts the second quarter. Maybe they lose 10 points, but it's fine. Like to your point, Steph's coming back in.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And when Steph and Clay play together, they can put 20 on you in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But with tennis, it's just you.
With you, yeah, it's just you and what you can do. I mean, you can have a coach talk to you in the middle, but you just see that hurt just as much as it helps. Like just the mental anguish that tennis provides you and just the hopelessness that can come with tennis is unlike anything else.
I love it. Okay, so we're seriously talking some sports ball here.
Yeah.
So what do you pick up from that? I mean, I'm assuming, is that something you still carry with you in your life, you think? Was it formational or was it just like, I played tennis. I hit the ball around a little bit.
So I've always been in love with sports. But see, so I'm the oldest of 4 boys. So my mom and dad had 4 boys. And at one time we were 5'3", 1 and born. So just a little pocket of just testosterone, just ready to explode, like wherever we were at.
Does that mean your house was like ultra competitive?
Ultra competitive.
Yeah.
So for me, so things like music came really easy. I was like, oh, this is just something naturally that I can do. Everything I've done athletically is something I've had to put immense effort into. It did not come naturally. Now, I might be naturally like able to balance. I might be able to like naturally like control my body. But I've always had weight focus. I've always had, I had to watch what I'm eating, had to always be aware of that. And I've always had to like really, really work to overcome that in the realm of sports. My second oldest brother, so I'm the oldest, the second to oldest, Isaac, is just a beanpole and just naturally talented in everything that he does. So he's naturally fast, naturally athletic, naturally flexible. And so, we all decided to play tennis at 9th grade. When he got to 9th grade, it was just bang. He's going to be the first. He's going to be number 1 on our tennis team. Like he just picked that. And the reason is his mental focus is just so much different than the rest of us. If it's something that he wants, like I think everybody has an addictive personality to some degree.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think athletes, the good ones, can funnel that into their craft and making sure that the mental aspect of what they do doesn't trickle into what the rest of the game relies on them to perform with. So Isaac just came naturally in that arena, and so that was something. I was always competitive, so I'm like, well, me and my fat butt, we're gonna try and beat little brother at this thing and make this happen, and all that. So what it taught me longevity wise, like, cause I coach tennis after that, I coach at a gym now, and all that is just, and even as a worship leader now, like the gift of sports is understanding that ultimately, yes, you're on a team. And even in tennis, as an individual sport, like you're playing for your school, you're playing for your unit, like what you do matters to the whole team. And if you're not mentally prepared for what your role requires of you and what the match requires of you and the assignment requires of you, it hurts the whole. And so you have to be mature enough to understand that it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
You have to be mature enough to understand that it's not going to be easy, that people aren't just going to get out of the way and let your serve hit. Like they're going to hit back, and you have to decide how to respond to that.
Yeah. All my kids play soccer, and one of the things I hate is that when I was in high school, there was no soccer here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just wasn't a thing. And I know that if it had been here, oh my gosh, I would have loved that.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've so enjoyed just watching them play is not just their performance, because the kids have turned out to be good soccer players, but there's just some stuff you learn in those moments that is so useful for the rest of your life. Like learning how to win. That's important. Learning how to take a loss. You know, not everything goes your way. Even sometimes when you're the best team or the better player, things just go a weird way, and then all of a sudden you lose. And like learning how to like take an L and figure out what you're going to do next.
And that's all the mental side
of
everything.
Yeah.
You know, because your leg's not going to be the reason why you didn't win the soccer match. Your arm's not going to be the reason why you didn't win the tennis match.
Yeah.
You know, it's the mental responsibility and the mental hurdles that you're either walking through or choosing not to walk through. And
that just translates to life.
Yep.
I'm just seeing it over and over again.
Yep.
That's cool. Well, hey, you mentioned that you coach at a gym. What do you do? What is that?
Yeah. So it's probably been about 3 years now. It's probably in the worst shape of my life. We had a little girl,
Evelyn.
Shout out. Yep. She was about a year old, and I was still working on that sympathy weight for my wife, even though we didn't have kids anymore, or she wasn't pregnant anymore. So I'd gotten up to about 315 pounds. And with that came a lot of physical concerns. I was pre-diabetic. I had pre-hypertension, or I had hypertension. I had sleep apnea, pre-sleep apnea. And walking upstairs, I'm out of breath, like just dumb stuff. And it's just not taking care of your body at all. And so I was 315 pounds, and my wife was starting to go to a CrossFit gym, and she said, "You should come." And I was like, "I'm good. I'm all right." And then like it literally got to the point where my wife was like in tears saying like, "Do you know how many times I have to budge you in the middle of the night because you're just not breathing?" Like I literally just pray in the middle of the night because you're not breathing for 3 or 4 minutes at a time. And I finally have to just shove you, and then you stir up and you get upset that I woke you up.
Yeah.
But you're not breathing. It's terrifying. And so my wife would stop crying. I went to a CrossFit gym. I went the day before Thanksgiving. I think it was 2017.
Oh no. So was it like a hero workout?
It was a mega workout.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, usually around every holiday, like going into the holiday or coming out of the holiday, in the CrossFit world, there's like a hero workout, and that means like mega.
Yeah.
So what happened?
So that specific workout. So I say 3 years is when I really started taking like control of my weight. I started doing CrossFit 2 years before that, really like just kind of halfway here and there, stuff like that. And, so that was a workout. That was the day before Thanksgiving. That thing was, so the way CrossFit works is there's rep counts. So instead of just simply 5 rounds of something, sometimes they'll just do a rep scheme of 21, 15, 9. 21 reps of this, 15 reps of this, 9 reps of this.
Yes.
This happened to be 21, 18, 15, 12, 9 reps of knees to elbow. You got your arms hanging off of a pull-up bar, and then you're driving your knees up to hit your elbows. So you're just doing this mega crunch in the air. From there into power snatches, into wall balls, and you're just doing those 3 movements for 21 reps, then 18 reps, then 15 reps, 12 reps, 9 reps. So I knew I was in trouble because the guy looked at me and said, "Let's do something else." So,
like the coach said this.
He said, "Let me help you."
Yeah.
So we did something that was like 15, 12, 9 instead.
Yeah.
And it was, "Hey, let's just do some sit-ups. Let's do a wall ball, a little less weight, and let's just do the bar instead of 115-pound power snatches. Let's just do power snatches at like 45, 55 pounds. Let's just do that." And I couldn't finish halfway through the round of 12. I did a whole round of 15, and then halfway through the round of 12, I just lay in the back and just hide.
Yeah.
And that's where I started. And then the next day I ate a ton at Thanksgiving and just totally undid the workout. And so I basically just went on that cycle for about a good year and a half. And then finally, like after my wife convinced me and everything, like moved into watching what I ate. Started hitting the gym 3 days a week, then 4 days a week, then up to 6 days a week. And I lost 100 pounds doing CrossFit. And so through that journey, I just fell in love with the sport, fell in love with, again, it's that individual mental game, as well as you're on a team of people that you work out with. You have different scheduled times where you're working out with people, and you have this new community. you build off of that into, just different goals that you have as an athlete, different
Well, one of the
things.
things that I've picked up, because I do CrossFit. I'm not awesome. I just go, right? And I'm like, it's a way to keep my old man body working. But one of the things I love is actually that word you used a moment ago, that community aspect.
Mm-hmm.
You will do things physically with other people that you would never do alone.
That's right.
So those workouts, like that mega workout at Thanksgiving, the one you didn't complete at the beginning.
Yeah.
You would never even attempt that alone.
No.
Let alone do it.
Right.
And then after your capacity comes up to the spot where you could do it,
mm-hmm.
you would never go to your home gym by yourself and just do that. Like the number of people in the world who will do that are like one.
Well, so there's the individual sport like mindset of like, I have to do this. And then there's people that would do that by themselves. Those are sociopaths.
Yeah.
Those are people that
David Goggins.
Yeah.
It's just like their brain is broke.
They kill and eat people. Like and so
Yes.
You don't trust those people.
No, you don't. But with a group of people, it's really interesting. And I've noticed that so many times at CrossFit, like you will do things like as this unit, and it's tapping into something, I'll use the word here, deep history. It's tapping into our human deep history of like tribes or something. Back before we were just like people going to Walmart, living in neighborhoods that we don't talk to each other.
Yeah, if a caveman would do it, I'd do it. If a caveman would eat it, I'd eat it. Like,
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's something to that, and I find it to be really fun. Like even this morning, it was me, it was you. We went to my little CrossFit gym here.
Mm-hmm.
Me, you, my daughter Magnolia, and River. There was a couple other people, but the four of us, we did something together this morning.
Yep.
And I wouldn't have done that, and that was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the whole community aspect of CrossFit gyms, it's always fascinating to look at. I don't try to look at every single thing as, well, how does this tie back into the church? But
Sure.
I think as believers in Jesus, I think it's critical to see the why behind everything that we do and how God's using that for his glory and how he's shaping us and refining us in these different ways, So, within the aspect of athleticism, with body transformation, with health and fitness, with community, all things are made right. And you can see how he's still doing that in these different facets that don't involve the church, but you get to still be the church in these avenues.
Yeah, it's really cool too to see how welcoming and accepting that community can be.
Mm-hmm.
Like people can come in, like at our CrossFit box, like we got some young athletes who are monsters,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're just monsters. They're like Navy SEALs or something. I don't know what they are. They're just stone cold monsters. And then we have other people who are there who are like, little old ladies who are picking up their barbells and stuff. And it's like, what? This is so cool.
Yeah.
It's such a cool little group of people. And I don't know. I love that.
So after maintaining the weight loss and going a lot and all that stuff, they asked if I would go get my level 1 training stuff for that. And so now I get to coach at CrossFit gyms. And
okay. So you lead worship on Sunday mornings. You got a full-time job at the church.
Yep.
But your side hustle is?
Side hustle being, I do it enough to where now I have a free membership.
Correct.
Through the gym.
Correct.
And so I make like $50 a month. It's nothing.
Yeah.
But it's more I just love walking through with people's stories, and like the reason why people gain weight is not because they love food.
Correct. Talk about that.
Yeah.
Because we're a culture that's sometimes body obsessed in a really negative way.
Yeah. No, people
talk about that.
Well, people lose weight and gain weight for a multitude of reasons. And some of them are health-based. I want to say that mine were all completely health-based, but there's a lot of ego and pride that go into that as well. You just don't like the way you look. And so most people gain weight not just because they love Pizza Hut stuffed crust pizza. They eat to hide from the emotional trauma of life, the mental trauma of life, the lack of spiritual awareness or direction in their life.
Yeah.
And just the things that keep hitting you.
Yeah.
So just like we were talking about with tennis, like there's this whole spiritual aspect to every single thing that we do. There's this whole mental aspect to everything that we do. And when we aren't aware of that, then we start to cope.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we do to cope in America is overeat, overdrink, overspend.
Yeah. I mean,
overindulge.
I feel that. And so the eating side has not been my thing. That hasn't been, But if you want to talk about like overindulge, yeah, like whose story isn't connected there,
Right.
right? Totally.
No.
Because we're wanting comfort somewhere, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that.
No, we're looking for answers and not knowing where the source is.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that in the church.
Yeah.
This is not something that we figured out and everyone else is like, it's like, you sure that's not just from the gym? Like, no, this is all Jesus, baby. Like, no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
It's something that, I got to preach at our church a few months back, and I started off on something like this, and it was called Christian Sins. And one of those is, just gluttony. We can eat and drink soda as much as we want without it being something that is judged immensely, and it's just something that we've kind of made peace with. At least they're not cheating on their wife. At least they're not cheating on their taxes. They're just they're just cheating on their belt size. That's it. And so getting a coach at a gym and kind of see the inner workings of that kind of stuff, it's been refreshing to be able to minister without a pastor title.
Yeah, and I would imagine, this is me being a little presumptuous, so if you need to tell me I'm wrong here, tell me. But I would imagine, Tim, that some of your own story comes in here, right? Like if you're somebody who showed up at the gym and you lost 100 pounds, I would imagine that that just gives you tremendous authority, inroads with people, like credibility. That's the word I'm looking for.
We'll look at our own story and the Vineyard.
Yeah.
You don't trust anyone without a limp. Like we hear that from John Wimber. Said, don't trust anyone that doesn't walk with a limp.
That's right.
And so what I've been able to do is use my limp, because I don't got washboard abs now. I don't got, this men's health like physique or anything, but I also don't have diabetes.
Correct.
I don't have hypertension.
Correct.
I don't snore in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't cry and punch me in the middle of the night to make sure I'm awake. Like all this, like it's the little things.
No, it's good.
But I get to walk through with guys that are, it's like, well, this isn't for me. Like I can't do what you're doing. It's like, and I get to walk through my story.
Yeah. I go, hey.
So
listen, give yourself.
It's almost AA to a little bit. It's like, I'm Tim. I'm a recovering fat guy.
Yeah.
And there's still things I got to put into check in my life to make sure that I'm doing things the right way. I still count calories. I'm hyper aware of how long I've been dormant and what I've been eating, what I've been, putting into my body week in, week out.
Well, speaking of dormant, and this is interesting. We've never had this conversation on the podcast, the one we're having right now. Mm-hmm. But man, I love being a pastor, right? Like, so you and I both, you're a worship pastor, I'm a pastor, but there's a ton of overlap there.
Right.
But one of the things that I've been very aware of in the last, I wasn't aware of it till I turned like maybe 37 or 8, especially the last 4 or 5 years. Tim, I've been very aware of how much of our work, I'm using air quotes here, is just like sitting at a desk. Mm-hmm. And then I go home and I feel terrible. I literally feel terrible. And I for a while, I couldn't figure out, like, man, nothing bad happened today. Like my emotions are not upset. What's the matter with me, right?
Right.
And then I realized, oh, you just didn't move. And
you feel siphoned.
You feel siphoned. You feel like depleted. It's the weirdest thing. And then in addition to going to the gym, one of the things I started to do was, if I didn't have a lunch appointment with someone, pretty regularly, there's this little Trace Pittman walkway here in town. Mm-hmm. And our city is like down by this creek at the park. It's really beautiful. And so I'll just take my lunch and I'll do like a mile and a half, 2 mile walk. And I feel amazing. But there's just dormant. That's I think that's a good word with a lot of pastors, because a lot of what we do, you might go, is spiritually healthy, but is physically terrible.
Right.
And eventually that physical and spiritual world, in the Vineyard, we understand that we have a theology that allows those things to actually overlap.
Right.
Like that our physical bodies are actually playing into our emotions and into our spiritual life with God even. And it took me a long time to put some of those things together.
Hopefully we're coming through it on this whole COVID thing. But that was just people's lives for 6-7 months there. It was just complete. And then for some people, even longer. We know in bigger cities, it was not as relaxed as smaller cities and communities like yours and mine. But all you're left with is my church going to survive this? Are people still are people still pursuing Jesus, even though all this stuff is flipped upside down, And so all you're doing is emotionally wrecking your body and physically being dormant. Gyms are closed. You don't know if you can go outside or not, and you're being a good citizen or,
Yeah.
whatever have you.
Yeah, no, we're going to look back on this period of time. There's going to be a documentary created in 5 years that is going to blow our brain, just about like the things that have happened to people. And I don't even mean, I'm talking about everybody.
Right.
Like the emotional, physical, spiritual toll that a pandemic has taken on people. But you're right. Like, I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, it's just even the anxiety of like, you don't know what's right.
Right.
I don't know. I don't even know what's right. Can we go outside? Are we allowed to sit in the backyard with each other? I mean, I think so, but I don't know. Am I going to kill grandma? It was super weird, right?
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, yeah. So how long have you been coaching at the box you work at?
I literally got my level 1 accreditation in March of 2020.
Sick.
And then 2 weeks later, the world shut down.
Yeah.
And so all that accreditation gave me was a key to the gym and an awareness that no one else was going to be there.
Yeah.
So the first 3 months of me being a coach at a CrossFit gym was the assurance that I would have a gym to work out at.
That was it.
And that was pretty cool for me.
Yeah, great for you.
But yeah, about June of that year, started coaching June 2020.
Yeah.
And so been coming up on about a year and a half of coaching now and stuff.
Well, hey, let's shift gears here, and let's connect back to maybe some of your other story, because you said your dad was a pastor, right? So you're growing up, you're Tim Jr.,
Yep.
Dad's a pastor,
Yep.
like even playing music at church and stuff.
Yep.
Talk to me about being a PK, because Tim, you have a faith, and you're a worship leader now, and you're one of our best worship leaders in the Vineyard, and when I'm with you, I don't sense any bitterness or anger or cynicism. And I know these are connected into like stereotypes of pastors and pastors' kids, right? But talk to me, how do you grow up in the church and have a love for the church, or how do you not lose your heart because you're seeing the inside of the inside?
Yeah. Being the oldest, like you get to kind of walk through being a son 4 different times with your with 3 little brothers. So you kind of get to see it all happen over again. Some of it subliminally, subconsciously, and then some of it actively.
Yeah.
I'm 32 now, so all my younger brothers are all walking through the ages of life that I know about.
Yeah, you've been there, done that.
Right. And so some misnomers with pastors' kids is pastors' kids did not go to seminary too. Pastors' kids didn't walk through the fields and then get blinded by Jesus and then had to have a disciple of Jesus come and restore their sight. Like, they're just kids, and they walked into something that totally transformed their parents' lives. And so to think that they are adopted into their faith is the same thing that we would tell anybody that thinks because they're American that they believe in Jesus, or because you vote Republican, then that's good enough for heaven. Like, those are all the, like, we do all that subliminally or maybe not subliminally.
Yeah, these are deep-seated cultural notions.
Yeah, and so with pastors' kids, I may know my way around a car because my dad was a plumber. I could be a PK. I'm a plumber's kid. Yeah. I could know a mechanic's kid.
That's right.
But I couldn't tell you like the steps to get there.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you the inner workings of how to get there, but I know the end result because I've seen my dad do it a number of times, and I've heard every message and stuff like that. So that's the danger
Yeah,
of
it
being
is.
a
It's a real
pastor's
thing.
kid is you know all the answers without any of the story or any of the conviction.
Mm.
And so that's the hard thing for a lot of people to understand, and for PKs to understand, you know. And so I've got a big heart for pastors' kids just because that's something that I had to walk through. I think the two things that helped me with that was one, my parents tried to give me as normal a life as possible. I'm not saying that you're abnormal if you're homeschooled instead of public schooled or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like there's some really cool, like normal homeschooled parents. There's a lot of not.
Yeah.
But there's but I was public.
It goes both ways,
yeah,
right?
I was public schooled. I was as normal a kid as I could be in a small town where everybody knew my dad and knew what my dad did. In return, I didn't feel like I had to rebel to, push away from that stuff. And the second, I had a great youth group that had nothing to do with my dad's church.
Yeah.
So I went to church for a youth group 20 minutes away from where my dad's church was.
Oh, nice. So you just went to another youth group altogether.
Yeah, I went to a whole other group, and that changed my life.
You weren't even, so at that youth group, you weren't little Tim.
I was just Tim.
Yeah, that's right.
That was the first chance getting to play drums on a worship team, getting to do ministry and be with people that, So my dad was a pastor of a church in the town we grew up, and everybody knew who he was, and it was advantageous to know him and to get connected to him. So I felt like I would get opportunities at certain things because that would give them an end to my dad. Yeah. So it was always, am I earning this? Am I good enough for this? Or am I just doing this because I'm Tim Brown's kid? Yeah. Or it's like, well, this is a good kid because we know his dad. And so everything was attached to that relationship. And so having a youth group 20 minutes away that it was all based on what I could be reliable for and be trusted with, and,
it was just a little room for your own discipleship journey.
Yeah. So that's something my three other brothers didn't really ever have. And then I see that work out with their faith journeys now. None of them are agnostic or atheist or anything, but it's not an active part of their life. And they would say the same thing within our understanding of what a pursuant relationship with Jesus looks like. Yeah. And so the other thing with being a pastor's kid is you just got to grow up fast. Because again, like they assume that you tuck them in with systematic theology at night, and you sing the Psalms to them when they wake up in the morning, and they're like, no, like I see your senior pastor in his underwear every day. And that's the pros and cons, the literal and the the literal and non-literal. Like I see him at his worst. I see him cuss at the football game. I see him say things he probably shouldn't have said, I get spanked by the senior pastor. Like, how does that shake your
I don't have a place for this.
Right.
Yeah.
So what happens with pastors' kids is they know all the inner workings of being a mechanic, even though they're not a mechanic. Right. Yeah. Same thing with being in a church. Like they see the church as the post office or the garage. It's just the place where their dad works, and it's demystifying. Yeah. It's not something that you circle your whole life around. I mean, wouldn't it be the weirdest thing if you just circled your entire life around where your wife worked at? Yeah. And so for a pastor's kid, it's really like, why would I make everything about where my dad works? Yeah. Not the creator of everything. Yeah. And it's two-way street. I think my parents thought that they did a really good job of pointing to the supernatural and pointing to the eternal. But I think that's something that was more passively taught than actively taught. Yeah. And as pastors, like helping our kids tangibly understand that Jesus loves them, not loves that their dad does this. Yeah. Like I think that's super critical for that kind of stuff.
Or even like Jesus loves that little Tim plays the drums every single Sunday. Right. And runs sound and takes care of all the stuff, Yeah. 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 Yeah, that's good. I just feel this conversation, and this probably just because I am a father who has raised his kids in church. Yep. I mean, we think about it, right? Yep. Yeah, it's good. Well, let's shift gears again here, Tim. Let's talk about like leading worship, because I know you started as a drummer, and then you had some opportunities to like play some guitar and started singing in the choir, and that kind of naturally leads into leading worship. But talk to us a little bit about your worship journey. I'm not sure we know where it started and maybe the steps along the way to where you're at now.
Yeah. I've been leading worship longer than I've not been leading worship in my life. So that's a gift. I think it's a gift. 15 years old, I led worship for the first time. I started by leading worship on drums. Our youth worship leader.
You were singing while you were playing?
Total Phil Collins
Don Henley.
style. Yeah, Don Henley, Phil Collins.
Yeah.
All that stuff. So, our youth worship leader graduated, moved away, and they needed another guy singer and said, well, I sing in choir. And so I started by playing drums and singing on the side. And did that all through high school. I probably led worship on acoustic guitar maybe 4 or 5 times. And then when I got out of high school, started leading worship off of that and stuff. But yeah, started leading worship at my dad's church at 15 years old and led worship at our youth group twice a month. And when I moved to Grand Junction, Colorado, was really excited to not be asked to lead worship, just go and be a member of the team. And I never really felt like I was called to be a worship leader. I just always felt like I was called to serve.
Okay, so talk to me about that. Because
I thought I'd be a choir teacher at a high school, and then I'd serve on the weekend in some capacity. And that's what the calling of leading worship was for my life.
Got it. And so how did that change then? Because that's not what you're doing.
Well, I didn't know that anybody made a career out of it.
Yeah.
I did not know that was a place that you could go. I grew up in a small little town in New Mexico, and everybody was either lay or was severely part-time. Like our worship leader at the church I grew up at got $100 a month for facilitating and preparing worship for a church of 120 people.
Oh man. Shout out to that guy.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So he was the grounds director of all of the district school facilities. So he oversaw all that during the week, and then he led worship at a local church on Sundays.
Oh man.
Billy Lewis.
Shout out to Billy Lewis.
Billy Lewis.
Hero of the faith.
Yeah. And so, I mean, those are just the people that I saw, and so moving to Canyon View, Grand Junction, it's a bigger church. Yeah. If you do make this, then they pull them out of the big city. They pull them out of the record label or out of they don't get built from the local context. That was just my understanding. It was not something that they modeled by any means. So there was always a level of separation with that stuff. So I was always either insecure in my abilities or just didn't understand how discipleship and development worked and stuff back then. So I came to Colorado Mesa, walked on their tennis team and had some vocal and drum scholarships. And within 6 months, I had left the tennis team, had left the music program, and was just serving at Canyon View. And so,
were you still in school?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, what were you studying?
Mass communications.
Okay.
Yep. So I moved over to PR and advertising. I literally Googled what's the easiest degree I can get.
Okay. That's the funniest thing I've heard on this podcast in a minute.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Thank you for your transparency.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too good.
So it's a lot of lectures.
Oh, my God. That was funny.
Yeah. It's literally a lot of lectures, not a lot of homework.
Yeah.
And I took a year bypass of I realized I was going to get a degree in vocal performance. And I was like, that's going to sound ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like, can you sing? Well, I have a degree. I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So
I got this diploma,
right,
baby.
So you can sing or you can't. You can play or you can't.
Yeah.
So I thought, man, this mass communications Bachelor of Arts looks a lot better.
Yeah.
I do it with the church now with overseeing their communications team and stuff like that now. So it ended up helping out. But I just started making myself available every time I could. So I'd be at the church Tuesday night for rehearsal for our young adult service on Wednesday night service, Thursday night rehearsal for our Saturday and Sunday gatherings. And so I was just always at the church, all for free, just all volunteered.
And you're just playing on the team or leading a little bit, whatever needs to happen.
First 2 years were just
drums?
Serving. Yeah, just playing drums or singing on the side. And then at 19 or 20, they asked me if I wanted to lead worship on the weekend. And I was just like,
yeah,
what? I was blown away. It's like, they're going to let me lead this here?
But what I hear in your story is you loved it, right?
Loved it.
You weren't just showing up to fill a need. You loved it.
Well, I think the big thing when I look at kids my age now maybe a little older, I mean, because I was a volunteer for a number of years, and then I transitioned into being the young adult worship leader. And then when I graduated college, that next September, I became the worship pastor at Kingview. So I became the worship pastor at 22 years old, and for a church of 1,500 people, it goes. So when I talk to people about this kind of stuff, and I see, people that are 19, 20, 21, they want that same opportunity. You can just see the mental gymnastics that they're running through, and the mental measuring of drapes they're doing in someone's office already. And it's just all about the end game.
Yeah.
And it's not about just enjoying being a part of the team, enjoying being a part of the experience, enjoying being a cog in the system, and not making it about yourself. And for me, I was fortunate enough for it to be something that I didn't even know I should be getting out of my system. Like it was just something I love to do, and I'd do it every day if they asked me to do it. Like it was just built off of that. Only later did I have to understand, like, hey, I'm here to serve a worship pastor that has a vision for this church, and I want to make sure that I'm here to help him make that happen as smoothly as possible. Like, you got to get into those different spaces of things and stuff.
Well, okay, so here's the other thing I kind of hear in your story. I hear the love for it, just the, you're in, man. You're serving Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, all weekend, showing up for the rehearsals. That's inspiring to me. But then I also hear this little theme, I think, in your story, which is like you're doing youth group stuff, and you're doing maybe even stuff at your dad's church, and so maybe these are like smaller churches, and then you're 22 and you're at a much, much bigger church. Talk to me about making that transition. Like, what was the growth curve in learning how to be a worship leader who serves really well at a smaller church, and then learning to be a worship leader who serves really well at a big church?
At the basis, there's not much difference.
Okay.
At the basis of it, do you love the people that you're serving, and are you being a butler that's serving the space to help them meet Jesus?
Yeah.
And so the thing that changes is the scope of whom you're serving.
Yeah.
And I'd hope at a church of 150 people, of 50 people, you're aware of more than just the people that are there every week.
Yeah.
And so it's a self-awareness tool. It's a realization of your responsibilities as a leader. You're not inviting people into how you worship. You're inviting people to worship.
Yeah.
And so when you invite people to come and experience how you lead worship, that goes into celebrity culture, that goes into self-gratification, that goes into not anything that we've been called to do as worship pastors. We're called to lead the room, not the row. So when we look at a space, are we leading everybody, or are we leading somebody's? So whether it's a room of 50 people or 1,500 people, I'm aware that in that room, somebody's heart is broken. Somebody's far from Jesus and given this one last chance. Somebody in the room is there just because their wife is making them come. And then there's some people that have really met Jesus, and this is something that they need to feed their soul.
Yeah.
And so how I communicate, how I lead, how I walk through the set, I think the 5 phases of the heart are the most important tools. It's the most important tool that we have as a worship leader.
Talk about that, because a lot of people listen to this, maybe they've never even heard of that. It's like a Wimber thing.
Yeah. Just the 5 phases of the heart basically leads you into deeper intimacy with Jesus through a worship experience. And so you have the first level of call to worship.
Yeah.
And then you have the second of expression of who God is. 3, what he's done. 4, the invitation of him to meet us. And then 5, the generosity of the body to give back to him. You hear a song like Great Are You, Lord, or Pour It Out, and it's all just based on because of who you are, not because of what I've done, because of what I have become aware of. This is what I do in response. And so I love the generosity shifting into a responsive revelation. It's like, because of this revelation, because of this thing that this is how I respond, and it's through a generous offering of praise. And so,
how long did it take you to wake up to that? Because when I hear you say that, I'm like, well, Tim, you're articulating that really well. And I feel like that's kind of a mature thought, like the thing you were even saying a moment ago, whether the room is 50 or the room is 1,500, I'm aware that somebody in here is brokenhearted. Someone is coming because grandma brought them Somebody's coming because I like what you said. Someone's giving Jesus one more chance. That's a very self-aware thought. Where did that come from? Because I don't know. Maybe that was alive in you at 18, and maybe that's because you grew up in a pastor's home.
Well,
I mean, when did that start?
Oh, I would credit our resourcing through Vineyard Worship for an aspect of that. I think Mike does an incredible job of that. Shout out, Mike-O.
Shout out, Mike-O.
I think people like Melissa that are on the team and Casey have done years of relationship building, and that bleeds into how they train and serve the broader movement. I think that you've done a good job of this. I credit not giving up on Jesus in my mid-20s.
Yeah. Did you have a thought of it?
No.
Okay.
So it's completely grace on that end.
Oh, man.
Beautiful. The church is not everything I have, but it's the epicenter of everything I love.
Amen.
And so that's a shift in what I've always had. It's not been something I've had to do. It's something I get to do. And it's never been something that I tolerate. It's something that I celebrate. And so that's always been a shift for me. And I've always wanted other people to see that too, that church is not a necessary evil. It's a foundation for the intimacy we were created for. I mean, again, like I've been leading worship in some capacity or another for 18 years. Yeah. And so I think that you hear of anybody that gets reps on this stuff or any kind of, Michael Jordan's great because he's put 10,000 hours into the Malcolm Gladwell thing, It's just, you want to do a ton of, like I've led easily probably 10,000 worship sets. And a lot of those were based on what I can do and check this out. And I just found that doesn't transition over to life change and deeper intimacy. The 5 phases of the heart help you understand that none of them are call to me, celebrate me, look what I've done, invitation to worship with me, and then generously give me your attention. It's all pointed towards Jesus. So the Christ-centric focus on worship helps me understand that this moment is not for them to understand how I'd like them to worship. This moment is for them to understand what Jesus is trying to connect them with. And so I have the privilege of being an older millennial. I'm 32 years old. Yeah. Like I've never been, maybe in high school, I was a part of church is the main thing for people. So that'd have been 2004 to 2007. So that's the height of Christendom. But for most of my college and after college life, church has shifted into a minority thing. And so just like CrossFit, it's something that you choose to do. It's not something that's readily available to you and the obvious next choice. Yeah. Like the people that come to church, especially through a pandemic, the people that come to church, especially during political divisiveness and division.
They're not coming for nothing.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, because there's a lot in our culture brunch is great.
Right.
Like Sunday brunch is actually great. Yeah. It's not a fake, Coffee at home is pretty freaking awesome.
Church has become either completely useless or absolutely foundational. And what you find with millennials, and it's happening with Z, and even with Gen X, like Gen X started this, is like, if it's not worth my time, I'm not doing it. Yeah. Like I'm not going to listen to this radio station just because I'm being told to. Yeah. I'm going to put on my own music. I'm not going to, like with a millennial, it's more, if it's not worth my time, I'm not going to put any time into it. And then with Gen Z, it's just like, I don't even know what that is. Like I haven't even the consideration of putting, so you just see that generationally happen. Yeah. But boomers and the greatest generation, like these are all people that are a part of our church still, they all feel the same way. They just don't say it out loud. Yeah. They just subliminally check in or check out with this stuff. So when you have the room full, you just understand what's going on with your life and your friends' lives and understand that represents your church. You got people walking through life unsure if this is what they want to be doing. Yeah. And that might have Jesus connected to it. It may not have Jesus connected to it. But they've given you this afternoon or this morning to indulge them and help them see if there's a bigger thing that they can be a part of.
That's right. Well, one of the things I love about your story, especially as we've talked about church and leading worship, one of the things I hear in what you're saying, Tim, is, I guess it's what I don't hear. I don't hear cynicism and bitterness, and that's really refreshing for me. And I wonder, hey, you said it's grace, and I believe that. So I'm not saying it isn't grace, right? I'm taking you at your word. It is grace. But man, some of it also just feels, it feels generational because I'm an Xer. Right. And man, if it isn't angst and tinged with cynicism a little bit, it's like, are we alive?
Right.
Do I have a pulse?
Right.
And so it's really refreshing for me to hear someone talk about church in these ways, because it's like, oh, it's a really great reminder. I'm challenged by it. I really am.
Well, and it's an awareness thing as well. Like, there's a lot of terrible gyms.
Right?
There's a lot of terrible churches.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough to be a part of a church that I've seen grow and struggle through things. And, there's been hard times and good times, but it's just, I see the church as not something that you make the same as a marriage, but it's very much the same as far as being called to a local body.
Yeah.
Is that I've been called to this bride.
Yeah.
And warts and all, it's like, yeah, she snores at night.
Yeah.
But
That's right.
But
it's my church.
But this is my church.
That's right.
And there's a lot of really awesome, beautiful things a part of this as well. And so there's been a lot of times I wanted to start new just because of that same angst. I still have that.
Yeah.
I've wanted to try to be in a bigger city or try to do something in closer proximity to places that would be more advantageous for my musical goals and stuff like that. And every time it's always been I'm running from rather than running to.
Yeah.
And I never want to do that.
Okay, let me just drill on that for a second.
Yeah.
Because Tim, you're a great singer. Like, you're a pro, man. Like, I can't sing. You can sing, and it makes me jealous. But talk to me about that, because you haven't moved to Nashville, and you could, because you're a really good songwriter, and I think you're a really good singer. So, but instead of moving to Nashville, you've stayed on the western slope of the Rockies, and you're 3 hours from a city, bro. From city.
Right. Yeah, we are the Grand Junction, the only intersection between Salt Lake City and Denver. So it's the one grand junction between those two spots. Anything that I've wanted to do with worship has always been geared around, I wanted to be connected to the local church. And so I grew up when Hillsong United was at its apex, and it was just starting out, just blew up. College was when Jesus Culture came out, and all I wanted to do was make a version of that. So we started Kaleo with that in mind, through Canyon View with that, like, the Vineyard deserves something that's young adult focused and something that's got a voice that's different than the boomer or the X voice before that,
that's right.
And so for me, it's always been, how can we make music for the church, by the church, and not just be a middleman for it?
Yeah.
Like, how can we get the voice of the church to the church?
Yeah.
So that's always been much more intriguing and exciting than just going and recording, which I love.
Yeah, of course.
But it's just not been something that I'd much rather grow old with people than just write songs for an audience. That's just kind of where my heart's been.
And I would assume, and again, this is just what I'm hearing and what you're saying there, I would assume that means you feel like Grand Junction's home. That's your home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason why I love serving the Vineyard through Rise events or through the conferences I get asked to sing at or any of that kind of stuff is because the Vineyard gave me a face to Jesus. And I grew up a pastor's kid, and again, either subliminally or intentionally, helped me see the gospel and helped me understand, I'm a sinner saved by grace. But growing up in charismatic Pentecostalism, it's a blind date with Jesus. You don't know much about him, but you got to love him, and you got to make it weird how much you love him. And so with the Vineyard, I was able to tie in both these things, that yes, what God's word says is true, and yes, his spirit is holy and living and active. And these two truths merge together to make this beautiful middle ground of who Jesus says he is who he is, and he's still doing what he said he could do, and he's still doing it for you. Amen. And this realization of that and how that transcends worship. As a worship leader, it's the easiest job in the world, because I'm not trying to make people see that. I'm not trying to make people figure that out. I'm not trying to make Jesus do this by this and this pixie dust or this little trick. All I got to do is be obedient. That's an old Carl Tuttle thing. The worship leader directive is not to be flashy, to be fancy, there's a lot of Vineyard Worship songs that are sang by not good singers.
Yeah, man.
But there's not many that are sang by disobedient worship leaders.
Dude, you want to say that again?
There's a lot of worship songs within our Vineyard history that are sang by poor singers, but there's not many songs that broke through our mold that were sang by disobedient worship leaders.
Yeah, that's our card, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just show up.
Yeah.
Make a place for people.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful, Tim. I don't know that we'll say it much better than that. Dude, we've been talking for a while, but I want to maybe ask one more thing, and then we'll we'll wrap.
Yeah.
Okay. You just got back from Maine.
Yep.
Working on a little project
Yeah.
that I'm so stoked for.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I don't know. Talk to me about it. You got to sing a little bit. Like,
yeah, man.
Yeah. Talk to me about it.
Yeah. So we did a couple of things. One, we got this new EP coming out at the top of the year. And so writing and got to sing a song that you and Josh Baldwin wrote. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. So fun.
Yeah, that was great. And
Shout out to Ballo.
Yeah. And then me and Jesse Meyer from Vineyard Boise wrote a song called The Devil's a Liar, and we wrote that and recorded that up in Maine this last week, and we've been introducing it at our church, and they love it. And it's just a simple truth: the devil's a liar. I'll tell you why the war is won. It's all because Jesus is alive. And sometimes it's got to be that simple, because we try to theologize. I don't know how the verb of that would be.
Theologize.
Theologize, yeah.
Yeah.
Phonics. We try to over spiritualize what is happening and what's going on. And again, it's that awareness of like, hey, like it's a season, it's a moment. COVID is a moment.
Yes.
And so the divisiveness that we feel, the aloneness that we feel, the isolation that we feel, even from our bodies of faith, like, oh, wow, like they all think of like this, or they all think about this, about other people, or whatever have you. Man, that's just an active attack from the enemy. And division's the only way that the local church is going to get submarined.
Yeah.
And so when we realize that it's all lies from the pit of hell, like that shifts our thinking into what we can do to celebrate who Jesus is, rather than what we have to try and manipulate and fix.
Yeah. And that just came out of a moment where you and Jesse are you on Zoom writing that song?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Just over Zoom. I had the chorus and the bridge, and we kind of walked through the verses of it. It's just the verses are baked in truths about who Jesus is and what Jesus has done. And like, if that's navigating our worship lives, navigating our home lives, navigating everything else, like that declutters a whole lot of things in our life.
Amen. Well, dude, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Hey, and also just thanks for serving out there on the Western Slope and showing up and helping us at Vineyard conferences and sing on records and stuff. We really appreciate it.
It's my privilege. Yeah.
Dude, so good. Well, listen, everybody, I don't know when this episode's going to drop. Probably right after the conference. Yeah.
It was an incredible conference. It was amazing.
That's right. Yeah. Wasn't the conference amazing, Tim?
Oh my gosh. When that one guy did that thing.
Yeah. When Calvin played the drums.
Yes.
Sick, bro.
Yeah, dude.
So good. All right, everybody. Peace.
Hey everyone, Casey Corum here, producer of the podcast. Thanks for listening. As always, if you've been enjoying the podcast, here's a few ways you can help us. First of all, leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Also, connect with us on social media. Instagram at the Ferment Podcast and Twitter at FermentCast. All right, everyone, thanks for listening. See you next week. Peace.